Hi, I'm Olof Hegeman working for Eperoto. We help legal professionals take their knowledge and experience to the next level, to do an even better job of achieving client and stakeholder needs. In this series of brief videos, we show you how to do this by using the theory and methods of decision analysis. In this first video, we get you started. And in the next two videos, we show you how to build on this foundation, to take it even further. Now, where better to start than with one of the world's leading experts on decision analysis in the legal arena, John Celona.
Thank you, Olaf. I'll get you started with just enough of the theory, then show you how to put it to practice, to take everything you now know and do as an attorney and make it work for you even better. Routine decisions we make intuitively. That's fast, easy, and works well for routine decisions. But uncertainty, complexity, and novelty frustrate intuition. These decisions require harder thinking. Using intuition alone often results in decisions we later regret. Many legal decisions are like this. To deal with these challenges, nature has upgraded our computer over time. Our first mode is our effective decision system, also known as Type 1 thinking, but I like to call this our intuitive supercomputer. It's fast, easy, intuitive, works well most of the time, but goes astray with novelty, complexity, or uncertainty. It uses subtle, complex reasoning processes that are difficult to trace. It governs emotions, trust, empathy, and action, and it is specialized for understanding others' behavior. So that is one part of our processing system. The second part nature has equipped us with is the deliberative decision system, or Type 2 thinking. I like to call it our logical coprocessor, or slow thinking. It's slower and more effort to invoke, but less prone to error. It requires concentration and focus at the risk of frame blindness. It uses transparent, logical reasoning, but does not lead to action unless trusted or persuasive. And the most powerful part of this coprocessor system is data and job exchange, where things that come out of your intuition you can put over into your deliberative decision system to construct experiments about what you might do and why, and then kick it back over to see what intuition says. So let's take a closer look at that and look at how best to apply our coprocessor to decisions. The formal discipline is called decision analysis. It was developed over 50 years ago. Decision analysis works by applying intuition and logic. From our intuitive supercomputer, we get the decision basis. That consists of alternatives, information, including information on uncertainties, which we express in terms of probabilities, and preferences for risk and time value of money. These we build into a quantitative model, such as Olaf will show you how to do in the software for a minute, and from that we get results and insight that we kick back over into intuition to ask a number of questions. Do the results make sense? Can I explain them? Have I missed something? And having pondered that over and arrived at some sort of a synthesis of what your intuition and your logic tell you, we can drive to action. Now for a legal case, we'll start simply. The alternatives are we could continue to litigate or settle the case. To think about the settlement alternative, let's look at the value if litigated to a judgment. Information we'll need includes the following. For a model, we'll need to quantify the value of each claim. We need a range of possible values and a likelihood for each. For preferences, we need an interest rate, time value of money, to calculate the value today of a future judgment for prospects that are far in the future. If your case is only over the next year or two, we don't need to worry about that too much, but if the matter being litigated and the consequences stretch far into the future, we need to use a discount rate to discount everything to a present value. For risk, for most cases, we can assume risk neutral unless the case could bankrupt the client. If it does, we need to explicitly consider a risk policy, and we can look at that in more detail. Now you could use a piece of paper or even Excel to do all this, but it very quickly becomes too complicated to keep track of, much less revise. If I were an attorney starting off in decision analysis, I would want something tailored to what I need as an attorney to help my client and which helps me think about the problem in legal terms. There are several decision tree software packages out there, but as an extremely busy person, you'd want something that quickly and easily helps you apply all of your legal training experience in a way that you're used to thinking about it. That's what Olaf is going to show you next, using a hypothetical case of a main contractor in a dispute concerning the construction of the similarly hypothetical Stuttgart Airport. Let's suppose a main contractor believes they are owed a lot of money for additional work when constructing the airport, but the city of Stuttgart, who has ordered the work, disputes this. How do you apply all of your intuition and logic to figuring out the value of the case? Olaf will show you how to get started.
So in this case, we represent the main contractor building the Stuttgart Airport, a major construction project. Now the city of Stuttgart, the respondent in this case, refuses to pay outstanding invoices and negotiations have come to a stop. There are several parts of the project where the parties are in disagreement. Let's start simple by looking at the dispute around just one of these claims. Work on building the airport's runway was delayed for a period of time due to confusing blueprints. The blueprints had conflicting instructions, causing delays and wasted time. Once the engineer working for the city clarified the confusion, several days of work had been lost and some work had to be redone. This caused additional costs of 5.4 million for the contractor. The city admits that there was a small mistake in the agreement's blueprints, but argue that this shouldn't have halted construction. The city argues that the real reason for the construction halt was due to a lack of technical expertise on the main contractor side. As per the agreement, any disputes will be resolved through arbitration. Legal representation and proceeding costs are expected to be around 500,000 per party, and the losing party will be responsible for paying both parties' legal costs. So let's get started by logging into the platform and setting up our case. We name the case Stuttgart Airport and call the first analysis Initial Assessment, as this is our first attempt to get a better grip around this one disputed claim. We choose the relevant currency, select arbitration under proceedings and enter the date where we would expect to get an award if the case was tried through arbitration. We then start structuring our claim in a decision tree, what we call a legal tree. There will likely be several arguments from both sides around the right to additional compensation. But at this point, let's keep it simple and just ask ourselves, will the tribunal award the main contractor compensation for the additional work with the runway? The alternatives here are yes or no. Based on our current understanding of the dispute, our hypothesis is that it's likely, so let's say around 75%, that a tribunal would decide in our client's favor. John will talk a bit more about using numerical values, percentages, when talking about potential events later on. We move on to the next question. How much would the tribunal award the contractor for this additional work? We start simple by adding 4 options: full, high, medium, and low. Even though the client's own calculations shows that the additional cost is 5.4 million, we know it will be hard to find all the supporting documentation to establish these costs. We deem it unlikely, but not impossible, to receive the full amount. We assign this amount a probability of 5%. In the software, it's advisable to always enter the full amount requested so that the analysis will include the actual amount claimed. We do, however, believe that the documentation shows that 5 million could be accepted and assign this a probability of 20%. The most probable outcome when assessing the size of compensation we think would be an award of 4 million, and we assign this a 50% probability. Finally, we deem that it could happen that the tribunal would only accept the compensation to be 3 million, but reasonably not lower than that. Now that leaves us with 25% for this event. John will later provide some tips around modeling a continuing spectrum of outcomes, such as the size of potential damages. Now this is obviously an initial preliminary assessment, but let's have a look at what this tells us already at this point. Directly in the decision tree, we can see the possible outcomes and their respective likelihood. To save some space, we can reduce the size of the nodes in the tree. By analyzing the claim already, without thinking about legal costs and interest rates, we can get an understanding of the overall strength of the claim. A 75% chance to receive something in the range from 5.4 million to 3 million, with the most likely being 4 million. The overall value of this disputed claim, or the weighted average, showing a value of around 3 million. In this graph, we can clearly see the potential upside and the potential downside. Now let's go back and factor in the legal costs. We expect the proceedings to cost roughly 500,000 per party, which includes the cost for lawyers and each party's cost for the tribunal and arbitration association. In the next tab, we enter our assumption around how the tribunal would deal with the legal costs. On the left side, we see the financial outcome, the potential claim amount awarded, and on the right, our settings for how the tribunal would decide regarding payment for the legal costs. In this case, we would perhaps assume the contractor would get all the legal costs covered by the city if they are awarded 5 million or more. Half of their legal costs covered if awarded 4 million, and that each party would pay their own costs if the award is around 3 million. Less than that, the contractor would have to pay not only their own, but parts of or all of the city's legal costs. This aligns well with the linear approach with 7 sections. Now we can see that the overall value of this claim has been reduced. This is because the analysis now includes outcomes where the contractor is awarded nothing and would then also have to pay the legal cost for both parties. Also, in the list of detailed results, we can see that in some outcomes, the contractor is not fully compensated for legal costs, such as here, where the contractor is awarded 4 million, but only half the legal cost will be covered by the city. Finally, we go back and add that the claims are coupled with an 8% interest from the end of June 21. This will add 2 years of interest to the claim if the award is made around the expected date. As you can see, this slightly increases the value of the claim. If we were dealing with very exact figures, big numbers, or a longer period of time until an award, it would be reasonable to calculate using the net present value of the future award. Currently, this factor will only have a small impact due to the short horizon until an award. Let's hand over to John to talk about this analysis.
So now we've entered some basic information sizing up the claim in this case. We gave a rough probability of getting compensated for the claim and an initial range of how much compensation a court may award. Now suppose there's a settlement offer on the table of 1 million euros for this claim. This doesn't look so good given our initial estimate that the case has a mean value of around 3 million. Of course, there's considerable uncertainty in that estimate. In a best case scenario, our client could get up to around 6 million, down to 0 if we lose on everything in court. Plus, there's a chance that if the court fails to find our case convincing at all, we may end up paying our own and opposing legal costs. That could actually put our client into a net loss overall. And now I'll hand this back over to Olaf for some closing thoughts.
Thank you, John. For many of the lawyers using the software, Starting off with specifying the claims in this manner is a good way to get an initial understanding of the case. As you will realize as we progress, if the number of claims increase, it's harder to make sense of the forest because of all the decision trees. In the next video, we'll show you how to take your thinking about a case like the Stuttgart Airport to the next level.